Jeremy and Joe, joined by Joe Yerdon on the Wester Hotline from Bleacher Report. Morning, Joe. Joe, you're a soccer guy. Should I care about the Club World Cup?
It's something I haven't known about being a thing until a couple weeks ago, and now that it's going on, I'm like, who cares about this? It's just a FIFA money grab as far as I'm concerned. So whatever. Hey, if your team wins it, I guess cool. But
yeah.
It's like a brand new made up thing, so who cares?
Yeah, there was a 10-0 game yesterday, I believe. Right, Josh Byron beat who?
It was Auckland City. Auckland City.
10-0
to Byron, yeah.
Great kickoff to your event when you have a game like that.
You got to love those championship teams from, New Zealand, I guess? Yeah, sure. Why not?
Right. Why not get him in there? Well, Joe, Peterka there, the comment from Friedman, this is turning into a drama-filled offseason a little bit. Adams wants to do things. That's the other reporting that we've seen, but there's two players to really think about their futures. Let's start with Peterka for you. How have you met all the chatter about him maybe wanting out and him being an RFA, whether he'll be offer sheeted? How do you see the whole Peterka, should you call it a saga right now?
This is it's a lot of smoke coming from areas that are essentially outside the team. I mean, you're not going to get a lot of buzz directly or even indirectly out of the Sabres. There used to be some leaks in that ship. There's no leaks anymore. Nobody's publicly or privately talking about any of this kind of stuff. And the stuff about JJ, where maybe he doesn't want to be here, any of that kind of stuff. I mean, if there's been an easier way to find your way out of Buffalo while Kevin Adams is the GM, the quickest way to do that is to say you don't want to be here anymore. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm certainly not going to deny, what Elliot Friedman's talking about. Elliot's much more clued in on these things, so it's certainly a concern point. The offer sheet talk, we love offer sheet talk. We all love offer sheet talk, right? I think it's a little bit overblown, though, because everybody's like, well, everybody's got more money to spend and all that. Yeah, it's a lot more money to match, too, for teams that have these guys. But it would be very concerning for me that if Peterka says he doesn't want to sign long-term, he doesn't want to do any of that, because you're immediately running into the thing. Because you say, we own your rights, so we can get a deal done here, and we'll figure it out from there. But there's no point in trying to do that. I mean, if he says he doesn't want to be here, whatever the case, make a deal. Make a deal. Try to. You kind of lose your leverage point if you acknowledge that he says he wants out. So I can understand any silence on the Sabres part, but. If teams are going to be predatory with offer sheets for him, you're just kind of helping Buffalo out at that point. But it's the bigger part of that. The problem for me is the concern that a guy this young that's been in the organization since he was drafted, the moment his ELC runs out, he's like, all right, that's enough. Get me out of here. That's the biggest concern for me.
Joe Yerdon with us on the Wester Hotline. The offer sheet part of it, you mentioned about they have the space to match. Would they be spooked by matching, though, for a player in your mind that, if they have it in their heads that, okay, he might not want to be here, or they know he doesn't want to be here, and we're locking him into a long-term contract with that situation, would they just, you think, side towards let's just move on?
I think that creates a really difficult scenario because if he's signing an offer sheet, it's with the team that he wants to go play for, and you're kind of held in place by what the compensation is that's set by the league based on how much they're going to pay him. And obviously, if they went big enough to make it where it's 4 first-round picks, thanks for the years. We'll see you later. Like that's an easy trade to make, I guess, in that situation. Granted, the Sabres are not in a position to be like, let's just amass draft picks and we'll be good with that. They don't want to be doing that kind of stuff right now. But if you want to beat everybody to the punch and trade him to where he wants to go and get a different price out of him, then I think you try to work that out. But that becomes an awkward game of chicken because, teams aren't supposed to be talking to guys right now. And, if this is all coming together on July 1st when you're trying to sign guys and trying to get other things done, that creates a whole different kind of pressure point. So, but if if Adams knows right now that JJ does not want to be here, he doesn't want to be here anymore, you got to be trying to figure that out before July 1st so that the leverage point doesn't shift against you.
Joe, do you think some say this, as we brought this up during the week, that they should not care about that and start to play a little bit of hardball?
You got to show strength, right? You got to. Adams is a proud guy, and I think challenging him on this kind of thing is something that will get his back up on it, and say, hey, listen, we don't have to do what you want to do here. We hold all the cards. But that's only true. That's only true until they get notified that somebody else signed. He signed a deal somewhere else, and they got the time to match it. It's a little bit of a different world and a different scenario where a guy restricted free agency very much is not in the player's favor until they take control of it. But if Adams wants to play hardball with if it comes down to making trades or whatever, absolutely. Try to get what you want out of this and try to get something done that is going to work more in your favor other than losing a guy and then only getting draft picks back in return.
Joe Yerdon with us on the Western Hotline, Bleacher Report, Noted Hockey. As we talk about Peterka, what about your worry level about Tuch long term and whether or not he would sign an extension this summer, and really what you think the Sabres should do if it becomes clear that they wouldn't get a deal done this summer and they'd have to decide whether to go into a final year with him under contract or not?
Yeah, his situation is really interesting because he had a phenomenal season, and that's building ahead towards him becoming a possible UFA next summer. But for everything that has been discussed about him since they got him from Vegas, growing up a Sabres fan, wanting to be part of the success story here and changing the narrative and getting them back to the playoffs and all these things. This is going to be his first time going into unrestricted free agency. Like this is his chance to really make a splash for cash, because when he signed his contract with Vegas, years ago, that was one, and I talked to Alex about this, during the season. They came to him with an offer where it was like, oh, okay, yeah, let's just get this done. And that could happen this time. If Kevin says, calls him 12:01 on July 1st and says, hey, okay, here's our extension offer. What do you think? And if it's a big enough offer, yeah, I think he'd want to certainly consider doing it. But you get within range of, and if everybody's not sold on like where things are headed and the direction things are going, on, obviously how things went last season with the losing streak and everything, it's put a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths, and everywhere in the city, on the team, it. But if this is something where Alex is like, I don't know, I'm not sold on where we're going with this, then boy, you're in a spot where the guy that grew up a fan of the team, grew up outside Syracuse, loves the Sabres, the whole thing, says like, I don't know about this. boy, that's a tough spot. That's such a tough spot. And if it's something where it costs a couple extra million a year to make it okay, I'm not sold that Adams and company are going to want to pay that kind of price for a guy that's already under their watch.
Yeah, well, I wonder that more overall about what their spending is going to look like, because they have spent below the cap every year here, and now it is going up to $95 million. So when you say that, like, I'm not sure they'd want to add a couple million more if that's what it took. I'm thinking, well, what are they going to be? They're going to be spending 10 below still going forward, or 8 below, when everyone else is going to get this influx of cash. I mean, really, Joe, I don't believe they would pay everybody, because right now the idea that they're going to have Peterka and Tuch and Byram all on long-term extensions this offseason probably feels like a long shot. But if they did just sit there and pay everybody, they would be up against the cap. But I don't know if that feels likely at all at this moment.
Yeah, and of the guys that are RFA that you got to get there. You mentioned Byram, you mentioned Peterka. There's Ryan McLeod that they've got to figure out what they're going to do with him. And there's Jack Quinn, who couldn't be coming off a worse season to be going into contract talk. So, but obviously, I think most of the trade talk has been circled around Byram for pretty obvious reasons, because you got Owen Power, you've got Rasmus Dahlin. You need another lefty guy out there who wants to be in a power play role, who's not getting it because they have the other two guys. That's a position of abundance that you can trade Byram and really make something happen trade wise to make it, to help the team out in the current run and down the road. But this is but if you're staring into the mirror and you're looking at it, and if it's true JJ doesn't want to stick around, and Alex has a lot of doubts, and he's not sure if he wants to stick around, that is a far more dire situation, because those are two guys that you're thinking are going to take you into the next 4, 5, 6 years down the road and being huge players for the team. And now you're like, well, if we're cutting those two out, who's taking those roles? Where are they coming from? Are they coming out of Rochester? Are you going to keep just having a churn of guys that are 18, 19, 20 years old taking over? Or are you going to take some risks, dip into free agency, and maybe pull a veteran out that'll work out for you? But yeah, this is a scary situation for him.
The offseason could get started tomorrow,
yeah.
Right? If the Cup Final ends, and it kind of opens the door and everybody doing what they want to do here. So, Joe, how about at the Cup Final? And Edmonton, it's not good. Is it good when you're going into a elimination of the season game and you're not prepared to name your goalie? Is that a good thing?
In my experience, teams that are doing this kind of stuff in the final or any time in the playoffs, it's a bad sign. That's a real bad sign. And it kind of takes me back to, I'm sure there's been a more recent situation with this, but it reminds me a little of 97 when, Detroit was knocking Philadelphia around and they kept swapping out Garth Snow and Ron Hextall, and they're just kind of like, well, one of these guys will get hot. And no, man. No, man, that ain't happening. And, it's kind of like an old problem coming home to roost for Edmonton, because Skinner struggled all season and they didn't make a move to help him out, to get a goalie, to do whatever, trade for John Gibson, do for whatever. They didn't do it, and now you're in a spot where it's like, oh, Skinner's, he's been hot, but he's cold again. Okay, well, who's our guy? Oh, Calvin Pickard. All right, well, all right, bud, you've been around the bend. Go get him. And, it didn't work on home ice, and now we're on the road, and we got to try to win to come back home for a Game 7. Not great. Not a great situation. Mm-hmm. And, McDavid and Draisaitl can do a lot of magic, and we've seen it. But this is asking them to stop the puck from going in against them. That's really hard. And Florida, I've been throwing flowers at their feet all playoffs. They are an incredible machine. They are awesome, I love watching them, and we're watching a special team here. This is 3 straight years in the finals, and we're talking about they're a win away from winning 2 in a row. This is crazy.
Do you think McDavid, especially if they lose tonight and he's held off the score sheet, it'll be 1 goal, 1 assist in the final 3 games, and the goal came when they were down 3-0 in the third. I almost, Joe, have an appreciation for hockey compared to some other sports where I almost feel like McDavid would not get much heat because everyone just knows how good he is. Like there's nothing really to figure out, whereas a superstar, the best player in a sport that hasn't won yet, in any other championship, in football or in basketball, if they're not putting up the numbers, what's the next month going to be talking about that sport? It's going to be that guy not showing up. And I don't know, do you think I'm wrong? I don't think we're headed for anything like that with McDavid, even if he doesn't kind of come through here statistically.
No, I think the issues with what's happened with the Oilers goaltending is a bigger problem. That, and they've been taking some real bonehead penalties throughout the series. Our old pal Evander Kane's been kind of in that spotlight in this series where he's whether it's malicious or not. There's been some of those plays where it's like, geez, man, what are you doing? But no, I don't think anybody's going to be getting on McDavid here. But I mean, listen, he's going to get the heat because he's the guy. This is just how it goes. But you're talking about going up against a team where Alexander Barkov's on the other side of it, and Barkov was. I know McDavid was incredible in the playoffs last year. That whole Cup final against Florida, anytime he was on the ice with Barkov had him in lockdown. He had him in a straitjacket. McDavid did his damage in the finals last year anytime he wasn't on the ice against them, which is exactly what you have to do to take advantage of that. But this is a full concerted team effort. This is Bennett, this is Marchand, this is all these guys coming together to be like, all right, these guys aren't going to beat us. Just don't take any penalties because they will score. But this Panthers team is just that they're nasty. I mean, they're nasty for obvious reasons, but also they're just nasty to deal with. It's really impressive the way that they've been able to handle this Oilers team this year, because this really kind of felt like Pittsburgh, Detroit in 08 and 09, where Detroit got one over on them, and they come back the next year and it's like, wow, Crosby ain't going to lose 2 years in a row, right? And it didn't happen. So because you're thinking, well, McDavid drives it, they ain't going to lose again, right? And well, here we are. Pittsburgh had Marc-Andre Fleury on their side. Edmonton does not have that kind of action on their side.
Yep. Game 6 tonight, 8 o'clock. You can listen to it right here on WGR. Joe Yerdon. Thanks, Joe, for taking some time out, and we'll talk soon.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.